The silk wedding gown hanging in her bedroom felt like a noose, and Felicity Fairmont knew she had less than 48 hours before her father would force her down the aisle to marry a man 3 times her age. She stood at her window on that humid August night in 1872, watching the gas lamps flicker along the cobblestone streets of St. Louis, Missouri, and made a decision that would change everything. Her father, railroad magnate Edmund Fairmont, had arranged her engagement to Augustus Pemberton, a wealthy industrialist who collected young wives the way some men collected pocket watches. At 54, Pemberton already had 2 deceased wives and a reputation for cruelty that even St. Louis society whispered about behind closed doors. But Edmund Fairmont cared only about the business merger the marriage would cement, not about his 19-year-old daughter's happiness or safety. Felicity had pleaded, had reasoned, had even threatened to run away. Her father had simply locked her in her room and posted guards at the door. She had 3 days until the wedding, he had told her coldly. 3 days to accept her duty to the family. But Felicity Fairmont had not spent her childhood reading adventure novels and studying maps for nothing. She had a plan, and tonight was the only chance she would get to execute it. The oak tree outside her 3rd-floor window had been her escape route as a child, and though she was older now, wearing a corset and petticoats, she was still slim and desperate enough to manage it. She had packed a small carpet bag with practical clothes stolen from the laundry, what jewelry she could easily carry, and the money she had been secretly hoarding from her allowance for months. It was not much, but it would have to be enough. The climb down the tree in the darkness made her heart hammer against her ribs, and twice she nearly lost her grip. But desperation gave her strength, and within minutes she was running through the garden, staying in the shadows, heading for the streets that led to the river district. St. Louis at night was dangerous for a young woman alone, but Felicity had calculated that the danger of staying was far greater. She made her way to the docks, where she knew the wagons and stage coaches gathered before heading west. She had heard her father's business associates talk about the opportunities in the Colorado Territory, about mining towns that had sprung up overnight, about a place where a person could disappear and start fresh. That was what she needed. To disappear. The livery stable near the docks was still bustling with activity even at this late hour. Men loaded wagons, checked harnesses, and shouted instructions to one another. Felicity pulled her hood lower over her face and approached a weathered man who seemed to be in charge. "I need passage west," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "To Colorado Territory, how much?" The man looked her up and down with shrewd eyes. $60 to Denver City. Another 20 if you want to go farther into the mountains. We leave at dawn. Felicity's heart sank. She had $40 in her bag. Even if she sold her mother's pearl earrings, she would barely have enough for passage, let alone food and lodging once she arrived. "I have 40, she said. "And I can work. I can cook, I can tend horses, I can—" "Not interested," the man cut her off. $60 or find another wagon train. Felicity felt panic rising in her chest. Dawn was only a few hours away. Once her father discovered she was gone, he would search everywhere. He had connections, resources, men who could track her down. She had to be on that wagon train when it left, or she would be dragged back to marry Augustus Pemberton. "Please," she said, hating the desperation in her voice. "I have to get to Colorado. I will find a way to pay you the rest, I promise, lady. I got 50 people wanting spots on these wagons." "I do not give charity. Move along." Felicity stood frozen, her mind racing. She could not give up. She would not. "The lady said she needs passage west." The voice came from behind her, deep and quiet, with a western drawl that marked its owner as someone far from St. Louis. Felicity turned to see a man leaning against a post, one boot crossed over the other, his hat pulled low enough that shadows obscured most of his face. But she could see the strong line of his jaw, the broad shoulders, and the way his hand rested casually near the gun at his hip. "And I said I do not give charity," the wagon master replied, but his tone was considerably more respectful now. The stranger pushed off from the post and walked forward into the lamplight. He was younger than Felicity had initially thought, perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of creek water. He was dusty from travel, wearing worn denim pants and a faded shirt, but there was something commanding in the way he moved. "Quinn McClain," he said, nodding to the wagon master. "I signed on to drive one of your wagons to Black Hawk, mining supplies, you said." "That's right. You still planning on leaving at dawn?" "I am, and I will be bringing my wife." Felicity's breath caught. The stranger, this Quinn McClain, was looking directly at her now, and though his expression was unreadable, there was something in his eyes that made her stay silent. The wagon master frowned. "You did not mention a wife when you signed on." "Did not think I needed to. We are married." "She goes where I go." Quinn pulled out a leather wallet and extracted several bills. "Here is her fare, $60 like you said." The wagon master took the money, counted it, and shrugged. "Fine by me. Be here at dawn, both of you. We roll out whether you are ready or not." Quinn nodded and turned to Felicity, taking her elbow with surprising gentleness. "Come on, darling. Let us find somewhere to get a few hours of sleep before we head out." Felicity allowed herself to be guided away from the docks, her mind reeling. Only when they were several streets away, in a quieter area near a small boarding house, did Quinn release her arm and step back. "You are running away from something," he said. It was not a question. Felicity considered lying, but something in his direct gaze made her tell the truth. "From someone. A forced marriage. My father is Edmund Fairmont. If you know that name, you know he will come looking for me." Quinn's expression did not change. "I know the name, railroad money." "Yes, and if you help me, he will make trouble for you. I should not have let you pay for my passage." "I will find a way to repay you, but you should know what you are getting into." "I am from Black Hawk," Quinn said. "Been working a claim up there for 2 years. I came down to St. Louis to settle my father's estate and found it had been gambled away to nothing. I got no money, no family, and no reason to stay in this city. Your father's reach does not extend into the Colorado mountains. But you called me your wife." "I did, because a woman traveling alone draws attention and questions. A wife traveling with her husband does not. When we get to Black Hawk, you can go your own way. I will not hold you to anything." Felicity studied him. He had an honest face, weathered from sun and wind, and there was none of the calculating coldness she had seen in Augustus Pemberton's eyes. "Why are you helping me?" Quinn was quiet for a moment. "Because I know what it is like to feel trapped, and because no woman should be forced to marry against her will." He pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his dark hair. "Look, I am not asking for anything from you. We play husband and wife until we reach Black Hawk. You keep to yourself, I will keep to myself. Once we arrive, you go your way and I go mine. Simple as that." "It is not simple. If my father finds out you helped me, he will destroy you. He has to find me first. And like I said, Black Hawk is a long way from St. Louis." Quinn gestured to the boarding house. "You should get some rest. We have a long journey ahead." Felicity hesitated. Everything in her upbringing told her not to trust a stranger, especially not a rough-looking cowboy she had just met on the docks. But her instincts, the same ones that had gotten her this far, told her that Quinn McClain was genuine, and she had no other options. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I will repay you for the passage, I promise." Quinn shook his head. Consider it paid forward. Someone helped me once when I needed it. I am just doing the same." He walked her to the boarding house and paid for 2 rooms, making a show for the proprietor of being a husband, ensuring his wife had proper accommodations. Once Felicity was safely inside her small room, she sank onto the bed and allowed herself to shake with the aftermath of fear and relief. She had escaped. She was going west, and she had found an unlikely ally in a cowboy named Quinn McClain. But as she lay in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the city beyond her window, Felicity could not help but wonder what she had just gotten herself into, and whether her father was already discovering her empty room. Dawn came too quickly. Felicity had barely slept, and when Quinn knocked on her door in the pre-dawn darkness, she was already dressed in the plain cotton dress and sturdy boots she had stolen from the laundry. She had pinned her honey-colored hair into a simple bun and covered it with a bonnet. Looking at herself in the cracked mirror, she barely recognized the society lady she had been just hours before. Quinn looked her over and nodded approvingly. "You look like you are ready for the trail. Got everything you need." Felicity picked up her carpetbag. "This is all I have." They made their way back to the livery stable through streets that were just beginning to wake. Merchants were opening their shops, and factory workers trudged toward their shifts. Felicity kept her head down, terrified that someone would recognize her, but no one gave them a second glance. They were just another couple heading west, like thousands of others. The wagon train consisted of 6 heavy freight wagons loaded with mining equipment, tools, and supplies destined for Black Hawk and the surrounding mining camps. Quinn's wagon was third in line, pulled by a team of 4 sturdy mules. He helped Felicity up onto the bench seat, then climbed up beside her and took the reins. The wagon master rode down the line on horseback, checking each wagon and driver. When he reached Quinn, he barely glanced at Felicity. "We are taking the northern route through Kansas, then up through Nebraska and into Colorado territory. Should take 3 weeks, maybe 4, depending on weather and whether we run into trouble. You got enough supplies?" "Got what I need," Quinn replied. "Good. Stay with the train, keep your wagon in line, and we will all get where we are going." The wagon master rode to the front of the train and raised his arm. "Move out." The wagons lurched into motion with a creaking of wheels and a jingling of harnesses. Felicity gripped the edge of the bench seat as they rolled through St. Louis, across the bridge that spanned the Mississippi River, and onto the dusty road that led west. She did not look back. For the first few hours, neither Quinn nor Felicity spoke much. Quinn was focused on handling the mules and keeping the wagon in line with the others, and Felicity was lost in her thoughts, half expecting to hear her father's men thundering after them at any moment. But as morning turned to midday and St. Louis fell farther and farther behind, Felicity began to breathe easier. The landscape changed from city to farmland, and the air smelled of earth and growing things instead of coal smoke and industry. "You should eat something," Quinn said, breaking the silence. He gestured to a canvas sack tucked under the seat. "I got bread and cheese in there. Apples, too." Felicity realized she was hungry. She had not eaten since lunch the previous day. She pulled out the food and offered some to Quinn, and they ate as the wagon rolled on. "Tell me about Black Hawk," Felicity said. "What is it like?" Quinn considered the question. "It is a mining town, rough, loud, and growing fast. When gold was discovered in Clear Creek in '59, people flooded into the area. Black Hawk sits in a canyon right on the creek. Central City is just up the hill. Between the 2 towns, there are maybe 3,000 people, maybe more. Lots of miners, lots of saloons, a few churches trying to keep everyone honest. And you have a mining claim there, a small one. It is not much, but it produces enough to keep me going." I work it alone, mostly. I do not trust partners. Why not? Quinn's jaw tightened. Because I had a partner once, my best friend. He thought he could steal my claim by getting me arrested on false charges. I got out of it, but I learned my lesson. Better to work alone than to trust the wrong person. Felicity heard the bitterness in his voice. I am sorry that happened to you. Life is full of hard lessons. You learn or you do not survive. Quinn glanced at her. What about you? What are you planning to do once we reach Black Hawk? You got skills. Money. Felicity thought about her expensive education, her knowledge of French and piano and watercolors. None of that would help her in a mining town. I can read and write. I can do sums. I am good with organization and managing households. So nothing practical for the frontier, Felicity bristled. I am not useless. I will figure something out. Did not say you were useless. Just saying life in Black Hawk is not like life in St. Louis. You will need to find work and it will not be easy. I will manage. I did not come all this way just to fail. Quinn smiled slightly. It was the first time she had seen anything close to warmth in his expression. I believe you. You got grit. Most society ladies would have fainted by now. I am not most society ladies. No, I am starting to see that. They fell into a companionable silence after that, and Felicity found herself stealing glances at Quinn as he drove the wagon. His hands were strong and capable on the reins, his profile sharp against the bright sky. There was something solid about him, something dependable. He had helped her without asking for anything in return, and that was more than any man in her previous life had ever done. The wagon train stopped at midday to rest the animals and allow people to stretch their legs. Felicity walked a short distance from the wagons, grateful for the chance to move after hours on the hard bench. Other travelers were doing the same, and she noticed several women with children, a few families, and mostly men traveling alone or in small groups. A woman about Felicity's age approached her with a friendly smile. Hello, I am Martha Jenkins. My husband and I are in the wagon behind yours, heading to Denver City. Felicity, she replied, catching herself before she said her full name. Felicity McClain. My husband and I are going to Black Hawk. Oh, the mining town. That is exciting. Is your husband a miner? Yes, he has a claim there. Martha chatted for a few more minutes about the journey and the West, and Felicity found herself relaxing into the role of frontier wife. It was strange how easily the lie came and how natural it felt to refer to Quinn as her husband. When they resumed travel, Quinn asked, making friends. Just talking to another traveler. She thinks we are really married. Good. That is what we want people to think. Does it not bother you? Lying like this, Quinn shrugged. I have done worse things. Besides, it is not hurting anyone, and it is keeping you safe. Felicity thought about that. He was right. The lie was a kindness, a protection. And yet, she felt a strange pang of guilt, as if by pretending to be Quinn's wife, she was taking something that did not belong to her. The days blended into a rhythm. Up before dawn, breakfast of coffee and whatever provisions they had, then hours on the wagon bench as the landscape rolled past. Kansas was flatter than Felicity had imagined, an endless expanse of prairie grass that rippled like water in the wind. The sky was huge, bigger than anything she had seen in St. Louis, and at night the stars were so bright they seemed close enough to touch. Quinn proved to be good company once he warmed up. He was quiet by nature, but when he did talk, he was thoughtful and often amusing. He told her stories about his mining claim, about the characters who lived in Black Hawk, about the challenges and rewards of life in the mountains. In turn, Felicity found herself opening up about her childhood, her love of reading, her frustration with the limited life society had offered her. I always wanted to do something meaningful, she confessed one evening as they sat by the campfire. "Not just be decorative." My father thought I was being foolish. He said a woman's purpose was to marry well and produce heirs. "Your father was wrong," Quinn said. "People are more than their roles. A person should be able to choose their own path." "That is a radical idea." "Maybe, but it is the truth." Felicity studied him across the firelight. "You are not like other men I have known. Because I am not trying to own you or control you." "Yes, exactly that." Quinn poked at the fire with a stick. "My mother was like you, strong-willed, smart, wanted more than what life had dealt her. My father loved her, but he also respected her, let her make her own decisions. When she died, he was lost without her, not because she took care of him, but because she was his partner, his equal." He looked up at Felicity. "That is what a marriage should be, not ownership, partnership." Felicity felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. "That is a beautiful way to think about it. It is the only way that makes sense to me." They sat in silence after that, but it was a comfortable silence, full of unspoken understanding. As the days passed and the wagon train rolled across Nebraska, Felicity began to notice changes in herself. Her hands, once soft and pampered, were developing calluses from helping Quinn with the camp chores. Her skin was tanning despite the bonnet she wore. She was learning to cook over an open fire, to haul water, to manage with minimal supplies. And she was discovering that she was capable of far more than she had ever imagined. She was also becoming increasingly aware of Quinn. The way he moved, the sound of his voice, the rare smile that transformed his serious face. She found herself looking forward to their conversations each evening, to the quiet moments when they would sit together and watch the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. It was dangerous, this growing attachment. They had an agreement. Once they reached Black Hawk, they would part ways. He had his life and she would build hers. Getting emotionally involved would only complicate things. But the heart, Felicity was discovering, did not always listen to logic. 3 weeks into the journey, the wagon train reached the Colorado Territory. The landscape changed dramatically as they approached the front range of the Rocky Mountains. The flat prairie gave way to rolling hills, and then to towering peaks that seemed to scrape the sky. Felicity had never seen mountains before, and the sight took her breath away. "They are beautiful," she whispered. Quinn nodded. "They are, and they are home." "Do you ever miss life in the East?" "No, the West suits me. Out here, a man can be what he makes of himself. His past does not matter as much as what he does in the present." "And what do you want to make of yourself?" Quinn was quiet for a long moment. "I want to build something that lasts. A good claim, maybe a ranch someday. I want to have a family, a home, something solid that cannot be taken away." Felicity heard the longing in his voice. "You will have that, I am sure of it. What about you? What do you want?" Felicity had to think about that. A month ago, she would have said she wanted freedom. But now, rolling through the Colorado Territory with Quinn beside her and the mountains rising in the distance, she realized her answer was more complicated. "I want to matter," she said finally. "I want to do something that makes a difference. I want to be more than just someone's daughter or someone's wife. I want to be myself." "You already are," Quinn said. "You just needed the space to figure that out." His words settled into her heart like a benediction. Black Hawk appeared almost suddenly, revealed as the wagon train descended into a narrow canyon carved by Clear Creek. The town clung to the steep hillsides, a jumble of wooden buildings, mining operations, and tents. The sound of stamp mills echoed through the canyon, a constant thunder that spoke of the hard work happening underground. The wagon train rolled down the main street, past saloons and supply stores and boarding houses. Miners stopped to watch the new arrivals, their faces blackened with rock dust. The air smelled of wood smoke and creek water and the sharp tang of ore processing. Quinn guided the wagon to a freight office where the supplies would be unloaded. As the other drivers began the process of checking inventory and signing papers, Quinn turned to Felicity. "Well, we are here." Felicity looked at the rough mining town that would be her new home and felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "Yes, we are. I got to get this wagon unloaded and returned. After that, I will help you find a place to stay. There is a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson. She is honest and charges fair rates. You should be safe there while you figure out your next step." Felicity nodded, but something twisted painfully in her chest. This was it. The end of their arrangement. She should be grateful. Quinn had done more than enough for her. But instead, she felt a sense of loss that made no sense. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. I would not have made it here without you." Quinn looked at her with those creek water eyes, and for a moment, Felicity thought she saw something more than simple kindness in his expression. But then he blinked and it was gone. "You would have found a way. You are stronger than you think." He climbed down from the wagon and offered her his hand. "Come on, let us get you settled." Mrs. Patterson's boarding house was a sturdy two-story building near the center of town. The widow herself was a formidable woman in her 50s, with iron-gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. "So you are looking for a room," she said, studying Felicity. "You got money." "Some. I will also be looking for work." "Work doing what? Anything honest?" "I can read and write. I am good with numbers and organization." Mrs. Patterson considered this. "Tell you what. I could use help running this place. The miners pay weekly for their rooms, but half of them cannot keep track of their accounts. I need someone to manage the books, keep the place clean, help with cooking and laundry. Room and board plus $2 a week. Interested?" Felicity's heart leapt. "Yes, absolutely, thank you. Do not thank me yet. It is hard work. You will earn every penny." Mrs. Patterson glanced at Quinn. "Your husband approve of you working?" Quinn spoke before Felicity could. "My wife makes her own decisions. If she wants to work, that is her choice." Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows rose, but she nodded approvingly. "Good man. Most men around here think women are only good for cooking and warming beds. Nice to meet one with sense." She turned back to Felicity. "You can start tomorrow. Today, get yourself settled. Your room is upstairs, second door on the right." As Mrs. Patterson walked away to tend to another lodger, Felicity turned to Quinn. "I cannot thank you enough for all of this." "You do not need to thank me. You earned it yourself. Mrs. Patterson would not have hired you if she did not think you could do the job." Quinn shifted his weight, suddenly awkward. "I should go. Got to get this wagon back and then head up to my claim. Check on things." "Where is your claim?" "About 2 miles up the canyon, near Central City." Felicity found herself searching for reasons to prolong the conversation. "Will I see you again? Black Hawk is not that big. We are bound to run into each other." Quinn tipped his hat to her. "You take care of yourself, Felicity." He walked away before she could respond, disappearing into the crowded street. Felicity stood watching the space where he had been, feeling inexplicably bereft. She had gotten what she wanted. Freedom. Safety. A new start. So why did she feel like she had just lost something precious? The next weeks were a blur of activity. Felicity threw herself into her work at the boarding house, learning the rhythms of frontier life. She managed the accounts, helped with meals, and organized the chaos that came with housing 20 miners in various states of cleanliness and sobriety. Mrs. Patterson proved to be a demanding but fair employer, and Felicity found satisfaction in the honest work. She also discovered that she had a talent for managing people. The miners, rough as they were, responded to her firm but kind manner. When disputes arose over rooms or payment, Felicity mediated with a combination of logic and compassion that earned her respect. Mrs. Patterson noticed and began trusting her with more responsibilities. But despite her busy days, Felicity could not stop thinking about Quinn. She found herself looking for him on the street, hoping to catch a glimpse of his tall figure or hear his deep voice. She told herself she was being foolish. They had been traveling companions, nothing more. He had helped her out of kindness, and now they both had their own lives to live. Still, her heart did not seem to understand that logic. 3 weeks after arriving in Black Hawk, Felicity was at the general store purchasing supplies for the boarding house when she heard a familiar voice behind her. Felicity. She turned to find Quinn standing there, looking dusty and tired but pleased to see her. Her heart did a foolish little leap. "Quinn, hello. I heard you were doing well at Mrs. Patterson's place. The miners speak highly of you." "Do they? That is kind." Felicity realized she was staring and forced herself to look away. "How is your claim producing? I have been working it hard, found a good vein last week." He hesitated, then added, "I have been meaning to come by and check on you, make sure you were settling in all right." "I am. Mrs. Patterson has been wonderful, and the work keeps me busy." "That is good. I am glad." Quinn shifted the sack of supplies he was carrying. "Look, I know we agreed to go our separate ways once we got here, but I was wondering if maybe you would like to have dinner sometime. There is a decent restaurant on Main Street, nothing fancy, but the food is good." Felicity's heart was racing now. "Are you asking to court me?" Quinn looked directly at her, and there was no mistaking the warmth in his eyes. "Yes, I suppose I am. I know we had an arrangement, and I do not want to pressure you. But these past weeks, I have not been able to stop thinking about you. About our conversations on the trail, about how much I enjoyed your company. If you are not interested, I understand. But if you are, I would like to spend more time with you, properly this time." Felicity felt like the sun had just broken through clouds. "I would like that. Very much." Quinn's smile transformed his face. "How about tomorrow evening? I will come by the boarding house at 6. I will be ready." They stood there grinning at each other like fools until another customer needed to get past them. Quinn tipped his hat and left, and Felicity finished her shopping in a daze of happiness. That evening, she told Mrs. Patterson what had happened. The older woman listened with a knowing smile. "I wondered how long it would take that boy to work up the courage. He has been asking about you all over town, trying to be subtle and failing completely." "He has. Oh, yes. Every miner who comes through here, Quinn has found some excuse to ask them if they have seen you, how you are doing, whether you seemed happy." It was clear as day he was smitten. Felicity felt warmth spread through her chest. "I thought I was imagining things. On the trail, sometimes I would catch him looking at me, and I thought maybe, but then he never said anything. Men can be fools about their feelings, especially good men. They worry about doing the right thing and end up doing nothing at all." Mrs. Patterson patted Felicity's hand. "But he has come to his senses now, and unless I am very mistaken, you feel the same way about him." "I do," Felicity admitted. "Is that foolish? We barely know each other. You traveled 3 weeks together across prairie and plains. You have seen each other tired, hungry, and stressed. That tells you more about a person's character than a year of formal courtship in a drawing room. If you like what you saw, trust that." Felicity thought about Quinn's steady presence on the trail, his kindness, his respect for her choices. "I do trust him, more than I have ever trusted any man." "Then give this courtship a chance. See where it leads." The next evening, Felicity put on her best dress, one she had not worn since leaving St. Louis, and pinned her hair carefully. When Quinn arrived at 6 o'clock sharp, clean and freshly shaved, the appreciation in his eyes made her feel beautiful. The restaurant was indeed nothing fancy. just a simple establishment with wooden tables and red checked tablecloths. But the food was good, and more importantly, the company was perfect. They talked easily, picking up conversations from the trail and starting new ones. Quinn told her about the challenges of his mining claim, about the dreams he had for expanding his operation. Felicity shared her growing confidence in her abilities, her pride in the work she was doing. "You have blossomed here," Quinn observed. "You seem truly happy." "I am. For the first time in my life, I feel like I am living on my own terms, like I matter. You always mattered. Now you just have the chance to show it." After dinner, Quinn walked Felicity back to the boarding house. The August evening was cooling as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. They walked slowly, neither wanting the evening to end. At the boarding house door, Quinn took Felicity's hand. "I would like to do this again, if you would." "I would like that too." "Good." He squeezed her hand gently, then released it. "Sleep well, Felicity." She watched him walk away, then floated up to her room feeling like she was living in a dream. The courtship that followed was unlike anything Felicity had experienced in her old life. There were no formal calling cards, no chaperones, no elaborate social rituals. Instead, there were simple pleasures: walks along Clear Creek, picnics in the meadows above town, evenings sitting on the boarding house porch and talking while the stars came out. Quinn introduced her to his world, taking her to visit his mining claim and explaining how he worked the rock, extracted the ore, and processed it. Felicity was fascinated by the process and impressed by the physical labor involved. She began to understand the pride Quinn took in his work, in the fact that he was building something with his own hands. In turn, Felicity shared her world with him. She told him about the books she loved, the dreams she had harbored as a girl, the frustration she had felt being trapped in a life where her only value was her marriageability. Quinn listened with genuine interest, asking questions and offering insights that showed he truly valued her thoughts and opinions. As summer faded into autumn, Felicity realized she was falling in love. It was different from anything she had imagined love would be. There was no dramatic sweep of emotion, no thunderbolt moment. Instead, it was a gradual deepening, a growing certainty that Quinn was someone she wanted in her life permanently. She saw it in small moments: the way he always made sure she was comfortable, the respect he showed for her work, the way his face lit up when he saw her. She felt it in the ease of their conversations, in the comfortable silences, in the way her day felt incomplete if she did not see him. But there was one shadow that occasionally crossed her happiness: the lie they had told about being married. Everyone in Black Hawk believed they were husband and wife. They had not corrected that impression, partly because it was easier, and partly because correcting it now would invite questions neither wanted to answer. One crisp October evening, as they sat by Clear Creek watching the water rush past, Quinn brought up the subject. "We need to talk about what people think about us." Felicity's heart sank. "You want to tell them the truth?" "No. Actually, I was thinking the opposite." Quinn turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Felicity, when I gave you my name on the docks in St. Louis, it was just a convenience, a way to protect you. But somewhere along the way it stopped being pretend for me. I look at you and I see my future. I see the woman I want to build a life with." Felicity's breath caught. "I know we have not been courting long," Quinn continued. "And I know you came west to escape one forced marriage. I do not want to trap you in another situation you do not want. But if you are willing, I would like to make our marriage real. I would like to marry you properly, with a preacher and vows and everything done right." Tears were streaming down Felicity's face, but she was smiling. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." Quinn pulled her into his arms, and they held each other as the creek sang its ancient song and the aspens whispered overhead. "I love you," Quinn said. "I think I have loved you since you climbed onto that wagon in St. Louis and refused to give up. I love you too. You gave me more than passage west and your name. You gave me the freedom to become who I was meant to be." They kissed then, a long, sweet kiss full of promise and hope, and the joy of two people who had found each other against all odds. The wedding took place 2 weeks later in Black Hawk's small church. Mrs. Patterson stood up as Felicity's witness, and Quinn's mining partner, a grizzled old prospector named Samuel, served as his. The preacher, a kind man who had come west to bring faith to the mining camps, performed a simple but heartfelt ceremony. Felicity wore a new dress made by the town seamstress, a simple blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes. Quinn wore his best clothes and looked more nervous than Felicity had ever seen him. When the preacher asked if anyone objected to the union, Felicity held her breath for a moment, half expecting her father to burst through the doors. But there was only silence, and then Quinn was sliding a simple gold band onto her finger and promising to love and cherish her for the rest of his life. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the preacher said. "You may kiss your bride." Quinn kissed her gently, and Felicity felt the last piece of her old life fall away. She was no longer Felicity Fairmont, society lady and unwilling fiancée. She was Felicity McClain, wife of a Colorado miner, and she had never been happier. The wedding celebration was held at Mrs. Patterson's boarding house, and it seemed like half the town showed up. The miners brought fiddles and harmonicas, and soon there was music and dancing and laughter. Food appeared from various sources, a potluck feast that demonstrated the community's affection for the couple. As Felicity danced with Quinn in the crowded parlor, she marveled at how much her life had changed in just 3 months. She had gone from a locked room in St. Louis to a mining town in Colorado, from despair to joy, from captivity to freedom. "What are you thinking about?" Quinn asked, holding her close. "How lucky I am. How grateful I am that you were at those docks that night. I am the lucky one. I went to St. Louis alone and came back with a wife I love more than anything." "What happens now?" Felicity asked. "Where will we live?" "I have been thinking about that. My cabin up at the claim is small, but we could make it work. Or, if you want to stay at the boarding house for a while longer, I could move in here. Mrs. Patterson said she would rent us the larger room at the end of the hall." Felicity thought about it. She loved her work at the boarding house and was not ready to give it up. But she also liked the idea of being closer to Quinn's claim, of being part of his daily life. "What if we split our time? I could work at the boarding house during the week and spend weekends at the claim with you." "At least until we figure out something more permanent," Quinn smiled. "That sounds perfect. We will make it work together." And they did. The first year of their marriage was a dance of compromise and adaptation. Felicity continued managing the boarding house, and her organizational skills and financial acumen helped Mrs. Patterson expand the business. Quinn worked his claim and began teaching Felicity the basics of mining, bringing her into his world in a way that made her feel like a true partner. On weekends, they retreated to Quinn's small cabin near Central City. It was rough and basic, but Felicity found she did not mind. She helped Quinn with the physical work of mining, learning to sort ore and operate the sluice. He, in turn, helped her with projects at the boarding house, building new furniture and making repairs. They were happy in a way that neither had quite expected. Their life was not easy, the work was hard, and the Colorado winters were harsh. But they faced everything together, and that made all the difference. In the spring of 1873, Felicity discovered she was pregnant. She told Quinn one evening as they sat on the porch of their cabin, watching the sunset paint the mountains pink and gold. "We are going to have a baby," she said simply. Quinn stared at her for a moment, then let out a whoop of joy that echoed through the canyon. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to put her down. "Are you happy?" she asked, though his expression made the question unnecessary. "Happy does not begin to cover it. You have given me everything, Felicity. Everything I ever wanted." The pregnancy was challenging. Morning sickness plagued Felicity through the first few months, and Mrs. Patterson insisted she reduce her workload. Quinn was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly worried about her health and safety. "I am not made of glass," Felicity told him one day when he tried to prevent her from carrying a basket of laundry. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. But you are my wife, and that is my child. I am allowed to worry," Felicity softened. "I know, and I love you for it, but you need to let me live my life. I will be careful, I promise, but I will not spend 9 months sitting still." Quinn reluctantly agreed, though Felicity caught him hovering nearby whenever she did anything more strenuous than reading. In November, as the first snows were falling on the high peaks, Felicity went into labor. Mrs. Patterson and the town midwife attended her, and Quinn paced the hallway outside the room for 12 hours, driving everyone to distraction with his worry. When the midwife finally emerged to tell him he had a son, Quinn nearly collapsed with relief. He entered the room to find Felicity exhausted but radiant, holding a red-faced, squalling infant wrapped in a blanket. "Meet your son," she said softly. Quinn approached slowly, almost reverently. He looked down at the tiny face, the miniature hands, the shock of dark hair so like his own. "He is perfect. He has your eyes," Felicity said. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months but never settled on anything. Now, looking at his son, Quinn said, "What about James, after my father?" Felicity smiled. "James McClain, I like it." Quinn sat on the edge of the bed and carefully took his son in his arms. The baby stopped crying and stared up at him with unfocused blue eyes. In that moment, Quinn felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. "I promise you," he whispered to his son, "I will give you a good life. You will never have to run away from anything. You will always have a home and parents who love you." Felicity reached out and took Quinn's hand. "We will give him that, together." The years that followed were full and rich. James grew into a healthy, curious boy who loved following his father around the mining claim and asking endless questions. Felicity eventually stepped back from her work at the boarding house to focus on raising their son, though she continued to help Mrs. Patterson with bookkeeping and business advice. Quinn's mining claim proved increasingly profitable. He expanded the operation, hiring workers and investing in better equipment. By 1876, the McClain claim was one of the most productive in the area, and the family's financial situation was secure. They built a new house, larger and more comfortable than the cabin, with enough rooms for the family they hoped to expand. Felicity filled it with books and created a small library where she could read and teach James his letters. In 1877, their second child was born, a daughter they named Alina. She had Felicity's honey-colored hair and a fierce determination that reminded Quinn of his wife's flight from St. Louis all those years ago. "She is going to be a handful," Mrs. Patterson predicted when she came to visit the new baby. "I can already tell." "Good," Felicity said. "I want her to be strong, to know she can do anything she sets her mind to." Life was not without challenges. Mining was dangerous work, and Quinn had several close calls over the years. The harsh Colorado climate took its toll, and they lost friends to accidents, illness, and the unforgiving elements. But they persevered, building a life and a legacy in the mountains. As the years passed, Felicity sometimes thought about the life she had left behind in St. Louis. She wondered what had happened to her father, whether he had mourned her disappearance or simply moved on. She wondered if Augustus Pemberton had found another young bride to marry, but those thoughts were distant, like memories from another person's life. Her real life was here, in Black Hawk, with Quinn and their children. In 1881, when James was 8 and Alina was 4, the family took a trip to Denver City. It was the children's first time in a real city, and they were wide-eyed with wonder at the tall buildings and crowded streets. As they were walking down a busy avenue, a newspaper headline caught Felicity's eye. "Railroad magnate Edmund Fairmont passes away." She stopped, her heart pounding. Quinn noticed immediately and followed her gaze. "Is that your father?" Felicity nodded, unable to speak. She purchased the newspaper and read the article with shaking hands. Edmund Fairmont had died of a heart attack at age 65. He had never remarried after his wife's death and had no heirs. His estate would be liquidated and distributed among various business partners. No heirs. Felicity realized her father had never officially declared her dead, but he had also never acknowledged her. In the end, she had simply ceased to exist for him. "Are you all right?" Quinn asked quietly. Felicity folded the newspaper carefully. "Yes, I am all right. It is strange, though. I spent so much time being angry at him, and now I just feel sad. He never understood what mattered. He had a daughter who loved him, but all he cared about was his empire." "His loss," Quinn said firmly. "You deserved a father who valued you for who you were, not what you could give him." Felicity looked at her husband, at her children playing nearby, at the life they had built together. "I got something better. I got a family that loves me. I got a life that matters. I got everything I wanted." Quinn pulled her close. "And I got you. Best deal I ever made." They returned to Black Hawk, and life continued in its rich, full way. James grew into a thoughtful, intelligent boy who loved books as much as his mother did. Alina was fearless and adventurous, always climbing trees and exploring the mountains. In 1883, their third child was born, another son they named Thomas. The mining operation continued to prosper. Quinn hired good men and treated them fairly, earning a reputation as an honest employer. He and Felicity became pillars of the community, contributing to the church and school, helping neighbors in need, and working to make Black Hawk a better place. In 1885, when Felicity was 32 and Quinn was 38, they took stock of their lives on a quiet summer evening. "You ever regret it?" Quinn asked as they sat on their porch, watching their children play in the yard. "Leaving your old life behind?" "All the money and comfort you grew up with," Felicity laughed. "Not for a single second. That was not a life. That was a gilded cage. This is living." She gestured to the mountains, the valley, their home. "I am free here. I am myself here, and I have you and our children. What more could I possibly want? I just want to make sure you are happy. That is all I have ever wanted." Felicity took his hand. "I am happier than I ever imagined possible. You gave me more than passage west in your name, Quinn. You gave me love. You gave me partnership. You gave me a future worth living. You gave me the same thing. Before I met you, I was just existing, working the claim, going through the motions. You made me want to build something bigger, to be better. You gave me purpose." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set behind the peaks. Their children's laughter rang through the air, a symphony of joy and innocence. "Tell me the story again," Alina called out, running up to the porch. "Tell me how you met." Felicity and Quinn exchanged amused glances. Their children never tired of hearing the tale. "Well," Felicity began, pulling Alina onto her lap while James and Thomas gathered around. It was a very long time ago in a city far away. I was trying to escape from something bad and I was scared and alone. And then I met a cowboy who was heading west. And he helped you, Alina interjected, though she had heard the story dozens of times. He did. He gave me passage west and his name, and he asked nothing in return except that I be safe. But then you fell in love, James added, smiling. We did. Not right away, but over time. We got to know each other, we became friends, and then we realized we wanted to spend our lives together. And now we are a family, Thomas said, young enough that the concept still seemed magical to him. Now we are a family, Quinn confirmed, ruffling his youngest son's hair. The best family in all of Colorado. As the children ran off to play a bit longer before bedtime, Felicity leaned against Quinn's shoulder. You think they understand how lucky we are? She asked. They will when they are older. For now, let them think this is normal. Let them grow up believing that love and partnership and respect are what every marriage looks like. That will serve them better than knowing how rare it really is. You are right, as always. Not always, just sometimes. Quinn kissed the top of her head. But I got lucky when I met you. That much I know for certain. The years continued to roll by, each one bringing new challenges and joys. The children grew and thrived. James eventually went to college in Denver, studying engineering. Alina became a teacher in Black Hawk, determined to give the children of miners the education she had received. Thomas followed his father into mining, showing an aptitude for the work that made Quinn proud. Quinn and Felicity grew older together, their hair silvering, their faces lining with time. But the love between them only deepened. They were still each other's best friend, still partners in every sense of the word. In 1895, they celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary. The whole town turned out for a party at the church hall. Their children, now young adults, organized the celebration, and friends and neighbors gave speeches about the impact Quinn and Felicity had made on the community. They showed us what a marriage should look like, Mrs. Patterson said, now elderly but still sharp as ever. Equal partners, respecting each other, supporting each other's dreams. They built a life together that has been an example to us all. As Felicity listened to the kind words, she thought back to that terrified girl on the docks in St. Louis, desperate and alone. She would never have imagined that the rough-looking cowboy who offered to help would become the great love of her life. She would never have believed she could be this happy, this fulfilled, this completely herself. After the party, as they walked home under a canopy of stars, Quinn said, 20 years. Has it really been that long? It has, and they have been the best 20 years of my life. Mine too. Quinn stopped and turned to face her. I want you to know something. If I had to do it all over again, if I could go back to that night on the docks, I would make the same choice. I would help that scared young woman. I would give her my name. I would fall in love with her all over again. Felicity felt tears prick her eyes, and I would climb onto that wagon. I would trust you. I would choose you, every single time. They kissed under the Colorado stars, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. The turn of the century brought changes to Black Hawk. The gold played out in some mines, and the town's population began to decline as people moved on to new opportunities. But Quinn's claim remained productive, and he diversified into other ventures, including a small ranch on the plains below the mountains. James married a lovely young woman from Denver and started his own engineering firm. Alina married the town doctor, a kind man who shared her passion for education. Thomas married a miner's daughter and took over the daily operations of the McClain claim, allowing Quinn to finally step back from the physical labor. Grandchildren arrived, filling Quinn and Felicity's lives with new joy. They spoiled the little ones shamelessly, telling them stories about the old days and passing on the values that had guided their own lives. In 1905, Felicity and Quinn celebrated their 30th anniversary quietly, just the two of them on the porch of their home. They were both in their 50s now, slowed by age but still strong. "I have been thinking," Felicity said, "about writing down our story, not just for our children and grandchildren, but for anyone who might need hope. To show that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave everything behind and start fresh. That is a good idea, you should do it. Will you help me? I want to get your perspective too, of course. We will write it together, just like we have done everything else." So they began the project, spending evenings reminiscing and recording their memories. It took months, but eventually they had a full account of their journey from St. Louis to Black Hawk, from strangers to soulmates, from two separate people to one united partnership. When it was finished, Felicity read through it and smiled. It was their story, truthfully told, and she was proud of it. "What do you think will happen to it?" Quinn asked. "I do not know. Maybe our grandchildren will read it someday and understand where they came from. Maybe it will just sit in a drawer, but we will know we told our truth, and that matters." Quinn pulled her close. "Everything about you matters. Everything about us matters. We built a good life, Felicity. Against all odds, we made it work. We did, and we are still making it work." They sat together as the sun set one more time over the mountains they loved. Two people who had found freedom and love in the Wild West, who had built a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. The years moved on, as years do. Quinn and Felicity grew old together, their love never dimming even as their bodies slowed. They had disagreements, as all couples do, but they always worked through them with respect and communication. They supported each other through losses and celebrated each other's triumphs. In 1912, they celebrated their 40th anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. It was a joyous occasion, full of laughter and love. 40 years, Felicity marveled. "We have been together longer than we were apart." "And I would happily spend 40 more with you," Quinn said, "though I do not know if my old bones would cooperate." "We will take as many years as we are given," Felicity replied, "and be grateful for every day." They were given several more good years. They traveled a bit, visiting their children and grandchildren, seeing how the West had changed since they first arrived. The mining towns were giving way to new industries, and the wild frontier they had known was becoming civilized. But Black Hawk remained their home, and they always returned to the house they had built together, the place where they had raised their family and lived their dreams. In the summer of 1917, Quinn fell ill. The doctor said it was his heart, worn out from decades of hard labor in the thin mountain air. There was nothing to be done except make him comfortable. Felicity tended him with the same fierce determination she had shown throughout their marriage. She sat by his bedside, holding his hand, telling him stories about their life together. "I am not afraid," Quinn told her one evening as the sun painted the mountains gold. "I have lived a full life, a good life, because of you, because of us," Felicity corrected. "We did this together. Promise me something, anything. Promise me you will not stop living when I am gone. You have too much to give, too much life left in you." Felicity's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "I promise, but you are not going anywhere yet. We still have time." They had a few more weeks. Quinn's children and grandchildren came to say goodbye, and he spent his final days surrounded by the love he had helped create. On a clear August morning, with Felicity holding his hand and the mountains visible through the window, Quinn McClain closed his eyes for the last time. Felicity grieved deeply, as anyone would grieve the loss of a partner who had been everything to them. But she kept her promise. She did not stop living. She spent her remaining years surrounded by family, writing more stories about the Old West, and volunteering at the school where Alina taught. She became a beloved fixture in Black Hawk, the elderly woman with the kind eyes and the remarkable history. People would ask her the secret to the long, happy marriage she had shared with Quinn. Her answer was always the same. We chose each other every day. Not just once at the wedding, but over and over again. We respected each other, supported each other, and never took each other for granted. That is the secret. Love is a choice you make every single day. In 1924, Felicity Fairmont McClain passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 71. She was buried next to Quinn in the Black Hawk Cemetery, overlooking the mountains they had both loved. Their children and grandchildren gathered to remember them, and the stories told that day were full of love, laughter, and gratitude. Quinn and Felicity had built more than a life together. They had built a legacy of love, respect, and partnership that would echo through generations. On Felicity's headstone, beneath her name and dates, her children had inscribed a simple phrase. She was trying to escape a forced engagement. The cowboy gave her passage west and his name. Together they found everything. And in the end, that was the truth of it. Two people, each running from something, had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances. They had taken a chance on kindness, on trust, on love, and they had built something beautiful that lasted not just a lifetime but beyond. Their great-grandchildren would grow up hearing the story of how Quinn and Felicity met, how they traveled west together, how they fell in love and built a family in the Colorado mountains. The details would change with each telling, embellished and romanticized, but the core truth remained. That love, real love, is about partnership and respect and choosing each other, every single day. The house Quinn and Felicity built still stands in Black Hawk, now a historical landmark. The mining claim that supported their family for decades is now a tourist attraction. But more than the physical remnants, what endures is the example they set, the proof that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take a chance on a stranger who offers you hope. Felicity had left St. Louis with nothing but a carpetbag and a desperate plan. She had found in a dusty cowboy with kind eyes not just safety or passage west, but a true partner. Someone who saw her not as property or a pawn, but as a person with her own dreams and worth. And Quinn, who had gone to St. Louis alone and grieving, had found in a frightened but determined young woman a reason to believe in the future again. Someone to build with, to dream with, to love with his whole heart. Their story was not a fairy tale. There was no magic, no destiny, no grand romantic gesture that changed everything in a moment. Instead, it was something better. A real love built day by day through kindness, respect, and unwavering commitment to each other's happiness. In the end, that is the legacy Quinn and Felicity McClain left behind. Not wealth or fame, but the proof that true partnership is possible, that love can be both passionate and peaceful, that two people who choose each other, truly choose each other, can build something that lasts forever. The mountains still stand over Black Hawk, ancient and unchanging. Clear Creek still rushes through the canyon, singing its eternal song. And somewhere in the Colorado wind, there is still the echo of a love story that began with a desperate flight and a stranger's kindness, and ended only when death parted two people who had been, in every way that mattered, one soul in two bodies. They had found each other in the Wild West, two seekers looking for freedom and home. And together, they had found everything they were looking for and so much more. Their love had been a light in the wilderness, a warmth in the cold mountain winters, a constant in a world of change. And that love, that beautiful, hard-won, everyday love, was the greatest treasure either of them ever found.